Hey folks, this is Kalani. I'm going to be talking about Crusader builds. Now, I'm going to be showing off a hammer build in this video, just in case either the builds that I put out previously aren't your thing, or you want to mix things up a bit and maybe get a little closer to your enemies. So, this is going to be quite a typical lightning build, using provoke with charged up and blessed hammer with thunderstruck. Now, you may not have seen something like this before, so it can seem really strange, but trust me, it works perfectly. Now, a few things which are going to help you immensely are things like Schaefer's hammer. This is a lightning skills two-hand, which obviously we can wield in one hand because we're a Crusader, which is fantastic. The proc on it turns you into a mini lightning conduit. It's fantastic, it really is. Now, additional to that, you want to stack things such as lightning skills deal more damage. Lightning skills deal more damage on your amulet. You can also get it on your bracers. Mine sadly do not have it. They're still with holy and I can't re-roll them, but it's fine. We've got holy damage in there as well. We've got condemn and heaven's fury, so holy damage isn't completely wasted, although it won't help you as much. Now, as a note, Reaper's Wraps are amazing for any Crusader because they help with wrath generation in ways which our primaries just can't seem to handle, which is annoying, but when you get your hands on Reaper's Wraps you'll notice the difference. And then anything such as an Andy's Visage, where you get another source of damage. So with my Andariel's Visage, I've got 100% weapon damage as poison within 10 yards of me as a poison nova. That's another source of damage. Okay, now this build relies on different sources of damage, and I'll quickly go through it to show you why. Now, we've got Punish with Raw. You can use Justice, and I kind of recommend you do if you miss your ranged aspects. So, Justice with Burst if you want ranged, but I recommend Punish with Raw. Now, Punish gives you the nice block chance, 15%. It's not so great, but it's a little bit of toughness in there. It actually hits harder than Justice, so it's better single target, but what I'm interested in is Raw. When you block with Hardened Senses, that's the buff from Punish, you explode with Fury, dealing 45% weapon damage as fired to enemies within 15 yards. So that's another source of damage. Every time you block, you are throwing out another source of damage, which is what this build is all about. So, Condemn, you can use Vacuum to suck things up and keep things nice and close, but I prefer the instant because I like running past things and blowing them up. That's personal preference. Provoke charged up is pretty much a staple in this build. For 4 seconds after casting Provoke, you deal 50% weapon damage as lightning on top of every source of damage. Okay, I'm going to use source of damage because that makes more sense. So every time you deal damage, so if my Poison Nova goes off, that's dealing damage. If I use hammers, that's dealing damage. Condemn is dealing damage. It's the tick of damage that we're interested in. So for example, as we go down to Blessed Hammer Thunderstruck, it's lightning damage, which is fantastic, adds up everything very nicely, and then you deal damage with the hammer, but Thunderstruck gives it an arc, so I'll show you that quickly. Now, the hammer can only hit one target once, so it can't hit one target twice, so that's one source of damage, but every time it arcs towards me, that's a source of damage. So that going around, imagine I'm surrounded by monsters, that's hitting several of them at a time. Every time it does, that stacks on with charged up for another 50% every time it hits. Now imagine Poison Nova's going off, imagine Condemn going off, and then we'll add the final piece of the puzzle, Heaven's Fury. Now we're using Blessed Ground to give it 2 damaging factors. So it damages in the initial laser, as you can see. The laser does damage, and then the dot on the floor will do damage as well. Now that ticks over quite rapidly, meaning that the damage that it's doing isn't all in one burst, such as Condemn. If you use Condemn with charged up, you're only going to get one extra attack essentially from the charged up with every target that you hit with Condemn, but because Heaven's Fury does its damage over time, it constantly ticks over, meaning that Provoke constantly ticks over as well, and because it's got 2 damaging sections, it's basically twice the damage. It really is ridiculous. Now, to finish it off, you've got a utility. Now, I love running Steed Charge, in this kind of build, because it's a very farm orientated build. I go to a pack, kill the pack, next pack, kill the pack, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. It's not really for taking on bosses, although it does fairly well with that as well. So if you want to run a lore, this is the slot you'd run it in. If you want to run Akarat's Champion, this is where you'd run that as well. For passives, Heavenly Strength, because we're a Crusader. If you've been playing Crusader for any length of time, you know this is kind of required by now. Some builds can get away with a one-hander, but you're sacrificing damage like every single time. It's not really worth it. Wrathful seems to keep me alive the best out of any of the kind of defensive regen passives, and I always like to run with at least one. I recommend Vigilant if you don't like Wrathful. Wrathful kind of works really nicely. Even though Blessed Hammer is really cheap, you can cast it a lot, so every time I cast Blessed Hammer, that's effectively healing me for 8,000 health. Now, the other choices would be Renewal, a block, which is a chance. So a chance when you get hit to essentially reduce that hit by another 12k, because you're getting hit. Yeah? Which is why I don't really like it. And then Vigilant, which is actually really nice. I mean, it's 4 seconds. So, 4 seconds or cast a hammer. And these two are exactly the same, although you get the non-physical damage reduction by 5%, which is really cool, but I still like Wrathful. We're using Blunt because we're using hammers. Blunt is practically a necessity if you're running a hammer build, and then we're using Righteousness because, gosh darn it, I hate when my Wrath runs out. So, that's the build. Let's go see it in action. We'll go try a Torment 1 Rift. Now, I'd recommend trying to gather up mobs before you nuke them down, but as opposed to running a build with something like Bombardment, you can use all of your cooldowns pretty much on whatever pack you want, so just throw everything out constantly.
That creature must die. Not ready yet. Make your peace quickly. Bad luck for you, friend. Patience. Require more wrath. Cower before Zakaru. Like chaff before the wind. Not ready yet. Bad luck for you, friend. Not yet. Patience. By the light be damned!
The Rift God.
Patience.